Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you today from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcast. And please tell your family and friends all about the show. Our guest today is Donny Abbott. He is here to celebrate Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner. Before we invite Donny into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the Adventures of Mahalia and Malcolm the Robinsons, written by Dr. Terrence Shipman and Prudence Williams. We love the books by Dr. Terrence Shipman. We love the books by Prudence Williams. We absolutely adore this middle grade novel that they collaborated on. Mahalia and Malcolm know that they do not belong to the typical African American family, but that doesn't stop them from loving their family and just being kids. After their home is invaded by a masked stranger, the siblings set off on a brave and daring adventure to rescue their family. Filled with excitement and riveting escapades, The Adventures of Mahalia and Malcolm the Robinsons is a perfect book to show young readers that superheroes come in all shapes, sizes, colors, and ages. The Adventures of Mahalia and Malcolm the Robinsons. It's a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, and it would be a great addition to any family library. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by The Search for Silver Linings, part of the Rhyme Time Twins series by Etain Raphael. You know, Etain's message in both of the Rhyme Time Twins books is to help raise generations of kids to be kind, empathetic, inclusive, accepting both of ourselves and one another, no matter our differences, to be grateful and optimistic. In The Search for Silver Linings, the twins come home from school after a very hard day when nothing seems to go well. They tell their mom all about it, and they are still very upset from all that happened. Mom decides to teach them how to find the positive things, the silver linings, that happened as well. It's a really, really wonderful book. Great messages, great lessons for your kids. And they'll just love the story. They won't even realize that they're learning. Check it out today. The Search for Silver Linings, part of the Rhyme Time Twins series by Etain Raphael. Joining us on the line right now from Fort Collins in the beautiful state of Colorado. Our guest today is here to celebrate a really wonderful book. I love the title, Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner. Please welcome to the show the author, Donny Abbott. Hey, Donny, how are you?
Hi, Jed. Thank you so much for having me this morning. It's great to be with you.
I'm really happy that you're here. I'm really happy that you're not, I assume that you're not claustrophobic and you're able to be out and be with us.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I'm not claustrophobic. I don't really have any phobias, although as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more afraid of heights. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I used to be a paratrooper in the Army. So, but yeah, not claustrophobic at all.
Well, that's really great. I think being uncomfortable with heights as we get older, I think that's kind of a wise thing, you know?
I think so too.
We realize if we land on our head, we're not going to heal in a couple of weeks like we did when we were 20. It's going to be a couple of years.
Yeah, just this past weekend, I was up on a ladder cleaning our gutters around our house. And as I'm up there, I'm thinking, I probably should not be up here. But anyway, the gutters got clean.
Yes, I was an early adopter to those gutters with the roof on top that you don't have to clean. I cleaned gutters once, and I said, we're going to buy that stuff. So tell me the inspiration for Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner.
Well, Stanley was actually a character at a vacation Bible school. I wrote the script for our vacation Bible school at a church that I worked at about 24 years ago. So Stanley actually was birthed 24 years ago at a church in Palm Desert, California. And Stanley was such an endearing, lovable character that I thought, I'm going to turn this guy into a book. So I wrote the text to Stanley pretty quickly, and then did nothing with the book for probably 20 years. Actually, until I moved out here to Colorado, I notified an editor here, and I asked her if she would take a look at my manuscript for Stanley, which she did, and she made some changes and kind of shaped it pretty much to what it is today. But then in 2017, I took part in a life plan. And a life plan is a 2-day kind of journey, looking over your life in the past and also kind of projecting out what you want to do in the future. And I shared with the life plan facilitator that I have these 3 writing projects that are in varying degrees of completion. Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner, Christ in the Storm, and a baseball screenplay. And Stanley was the one that was furthest along. So he said, Donny, you got to finish these projects, and in particular, you need to finish Stanley. So that's what I did. So I hired an illustrator who was a former coworker of mine, and I hired her, and we just kind of started the illustrating journey. And it took about 3 years to illustrate the book because, picture books are the most expensive genre in literature because of the color photos, and those tend to cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. You pay an illustrator to create them. So it just took some time and to save up money to pay for a spread. But over 3 years, I got it done, and here we are.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. We don't necessarily think about miners being claustrophobic. Obviously, they can't do their job if they're afraid of enclosed spaces. Where did that idea come from?
Well, I just thought it would be really humorous to kind of, juxtapose those 2 opposites against one another. And I just think that makes for a cute story, mm-hmm. But Stanley, he's a little guy. He's probably 7 or 8 years old, and he desires to be like his dad, who is a miner. And his dad was a miner, and his dad was a miner. So there's this long lineage of miners in Stanley's family. So naturally, he wants to be like his dad and be a miner as well. And one day, his dad wakes him up and says, all right, kid, let's go into the mine. And they venture into the mine, but pretty quickly, Stanley faces his first problem. And that's discovering that he's claustrophobic. So the cute part of the story is that he's faced with a challenge or a problem, and that problem needs a solution. So his solution is to, first of all, self-soothe by singing himself a song. I'm a claustrophobic miner, a trap 49er, 200 feet below. So he's kind of soothing his nerves. And the other thing that he remembers is he's gaining inspiration from his mother. He remembers that she always said that mirrors make rooms look larger. So he's got a solution to his problem. So he goes around and he gathers a whole bunch of mirrors and attaches them to his body. So he's got mirrors. He's got one attached to his tooth, one sticking out of his hat. He's got one tied to an ankle and elbow. And he goes back in the mine and it totally works. The mine looks larger. But then he's faced with another problem, and that is his fellow miners start to make fun of him. Of course. Why would a miner be in the mine wearing a bunch of mirrors? So they're making fun of him, and but he comes up with another solution to that problem, which is turning the mirrors on those miners. And they didn't like what they saw in the mirror, but it caused them to change. So Scraggly, he gets a haircut. Lefty brushes his teeth, and they all use the mirrors to look for gold in those hard to reach places. And then Stanley finishes the song with the next verse. Well, he says, I'm a claustrophobic miner, a trapped 49er, 200 feet below. Wish I didn't have these fears. That's why I wear all these mirrors to make the mine grow. So that's kind of the story. And the song was inspired by the Wizard of Oz song. You might remember, If I Only Had a Heart. Mm-hmm. So that's where the inspiration came from.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that idea of teaching kids that they can, first off, relax. When they're faced with a problem, the first step is to, okay, let's chill. Let's not freak out. Let's take a look at this. Let's discover what it is that needs fixing. What problem do we need to solve? We've talked a lot to engineers and scientists here on the podcast, and that's the one thing that they tell us is, like, in engineering and science, the hardest thing is to figure out what problem it is that they need to solve. Once they are able to identify that, then everything else falls into place pretty quickly. It's that discovering what it is that we need to, what are we afraid of? What's the real challenge here? And I think that that's a great lesson to teach kids, and especially to teach kids to, when you're faced with a problem, just relax and let's look at this calmly, because we can deal with it calmly.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you mentioned engineers, because my 16-year-old son and I just had a coffee with a civil engineer this morning, and talking exactly about engineering is all about problem solving. Mm-hmm. It's funny that you bring that up. But yeah, Stanley's, I think he provides a great example of, like I said, his first thing when he discovers that he's claustrophobic is not to get all panicky, but instead, okay, let's try to self-soothe here. And he comes up with this song. And people can self-soothe in a lot of different ways. Some of them can be harmful, like drinking or whatever. But other ways can be really helpful. Like with Stanley, he sang a song, or it might be praying or meditating or whatever. But, you can do all of that for so long, but the problem's still there. Mm-hmm. So eventually you got to face your fears, face your problems. And that's what Stanley does. And he does it in a creative manner. And we see that all around the world today. Mm-hmm. We see, our great tycoons in industry are in those positions because they found a solution to a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that too. And one of the things and I've been doing some reading, and, there's a lot that people are concerned about. There's a beautiful world that we live in, but it's an imperfect world. And human beings are wonderful, but we're imperfect, and we're making a lot of mistakes. And we could be doing better for ourselves and for each other. But I think what's going on in a lot of ways is we're really catastrophizing a lot of issues, and we're spending an awful lot of time screaming that the world is going to end, or we have to address this, we have to address this, we have to address this, and
yeah.
As opposed to sitting down and saying, okay, we get these issues, but we can fix them, because as a society, as a people, we've overcome bigger issues.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love how Stanley, the first person that he goes to help him problem solve is his mom, and just remembering what she said about mirrors. But I'm sure they had much bigger discussion around that problem than just, okay, honey, here's some mirrors, but it's just a good point to remember that our first point of contact, especially as a child, is always mom or dad, let them navigate whatever they're facing in life. So.
Yeah. I'm imagining that would be one of the neat conversations that families can have as they're snuggled up on the couch reading Stanley together, is just that whole reminding our kids that, hey, if you're ever in trouble, if you're ever afraid, you can always come to me.
Yeah, and that's very comforting. And it's really, like you said, it's a great discussion point to talk with your kids that it's not if you're going to face problems, it's when. Because you are going to face problems. And kids know that. They're facing problems every day, navigating friendships or how to play a game fairly and whatnot, But, it's comforting to know that mom and dad are there for them in those challenging situations.
Yeah. You just came through a challenging situation. You shared with us at the top of the show that you had this moment in your life where you did a life plan, and you look back at what you had done, and you look forward to what you're going to do. And you shared with your coach that you had these writing projects, but you just kind of put them on the shelf, and they were just gathering dust. And you were challenged to get out there and complete this and get it done. So Stanley is in the world right now. You've accomplished that. How does that make you feel?
It feels amazing. It really does. And I was never one to gauge my success on how many copies were sold. I just wanted to finish the project. And just finishing something like a book is such a monumental task. And I never really thought how much goes into writing a book, even a picture book that has relatively little text to it. It's a very challenging endeavor. And folks in your audience, they know that, who have either written a book or are aspiring to write one. It's something you really have to dedicate your life to. And I just flipped the switch. In 2017, when I came out of that life plan meeting, I was determined to finish Stanley, and I didn't care what it took to make it happen. I mean, I'm a pastor. I've been in ministry for going on 30 years. So part of being a pastor is, of course, officiating at weddings and funerals. And every wedding or funeral that I would officiate at, sometimes I would receive an honorarium, and I'd just set that money aside, and that would help pay for a spread in Stanley. And, it took 3 years to do that, but I was getting really impatient in the last year. So in 2020, I was getting impatient. So I wanted to fast forward the illustrating process. So I went and I began to muck horse stalls. So I did that for a year, and 2 hours every morning. I worked at a local horse ranch and, cleaned up after 6 horses and just put that money aside. But that just kind of shows that I was going to do whatever it took to finish Stanley.
Yeah. And you weren't shoveling any bull when you made that promise to yourself. You actually went out and you did that.
I did it. Yeah. And I think that's what, I've since I've published Stanley, and I published another book last year as well, I've been a guest at different writers groups and everything. And I just share with them that you really have to determine to finish this project, and just do whatever it takes to finish it. And a big part of that is the discipline to sit in front of your computer every single day and put forth text to your manuscript, whether it's a novel, a nonfiction book, or a kid's picture book. You know, you just got to show up every day. That's the key. It's like, you want to gain muscle, you got to go to the gym every day. So that's kind of the best inspiration that I can share with people, is to show up and write every day.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great lesson too for families. If you're listening to this and you get your copy of Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner, because parents are always talking about, this is the 50th time I've had to read this book. It's the 100th time. You can always read a book in a different way. And I think one of the ways we could read Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner is at the end of the story, and we say to our kids, hey, did you like that? What did you like about that? But, hey, listen, this author went through so much to get this done. He wanted this so bad. He wanted to share this story with you so badly that he would get up every morning and shovel horse doo-doo so that he could get this to you. And I actually think it's a great lesson for kids, just to teach them early on that, you got to face it. You got to get up. You got to be there. You got to be present. And also I think kids appreciate your efforts and really want to thank you for getting up and shoveling that stuff so they could enjoy Stanley.
Yeah. 6 a.m. every morning. They're shoveling. And, it just, I don't know what else to say, but if you have a writing project that you've been kind of debating if you should go forward with it, you should. Because your voice, our world needs to hear your voice.
Yeah.
And so the question for you is, what's keeping you from making it happen? And just do whatever it takes to overcome what that is, what that problem is or challenge that you're facing, and make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great advice. And I think it would also be great advice if we could tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner, and also find out more about Donny Abbott.
Yeah, so you can visit me at DonnyAbbott.com, so DonnyAbbott. And I have both of my books listed there, and a short bio, as well as a mission organization that I'm involved with, Cherish Uganda, where they minister to kids and care for kids who've been afflicted with the HIV virus. So anyway, you can find all of that on my website. I have some sermons that are there, so you can kind of get a flavor of what I'm like when I'm speaking and whatnot. So
wonderful. Yeah. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner, Donny Abbott. Hey, Donny, thanks for spending time with us today.
Thanks so much, Jed. God bless.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Laura Leigh Savarin. She'll be here to celebrate The Edge of In Between, a thrilling middle grade novel you do not want to miss. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, you do not want to miss an opportunity to tell the world all about it. The Reading with Your Kids podcast would love to help you celebrate your book. You can be a guest here on the podcast, and in a long-form conversation, tell everybody about your inspiration, about you, your likes, your dislikes, and of course, talk about your book. You can also submit your book to our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read, and you get to put your seal of approval on the cover of your book. You can also take part in our monthly promotion program. We will celebrate your book through commercials on the podcast, messages to our 97,000 social media followers, display your book at our network of digital pedestrian billboards. We have billboards all around the country. And also, display your book at any live event that we are taking part in. You can learn all about this and more by going to readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the author's Click Here button at the top of the page, and scrolling on down to the various services. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Donny Abbott. Please be sure to check out Stanley the Claustrophobic Miner. Also want to thank our sponsors, Dr. Terrence Shipman and Prudence William. Be sure to check out Mahalia and Malcolm the Robinsons. We also want to thank Etain Raphael. Please be sure to check out In Search of Silver Linings, part of the Rhyme Time Twins series. I need to give a big shout out to my team. They are amazing. Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Bell Castro, Ashley Contreras, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.